Obinna, Obinna, please open up.
Young master, if anyone knocks on your bedroom door after midnight,
If the first person to greet you on your wedding night looked exactly like your wife, but quietly whispered, "Don't let her touch you until sunrise," what would you do? Because tonight's story is about a groom who thought he had married the love of his life, only to discover that somewhere between the wedding altar and midnight, someone or something had taken her place. Stay with me until the very end, because the final truth behind the mirror will change everything you thought you knew. And if you enjoy deeply emotional African supernatural stories filled with mystery, suspense, and unforgettable twists, don't forget to subscribe and join our storytelling family. The entire village of Umudike had never seen a wedding as grand as the one between Adaora Nwosu and Obinna. People said the celebration looked like something from a royal festival. Long white tents stretched across the compound like floating clouds. Gold-colored fabrics danced in the evening breeze, while local drummers filled the air with joyful rhythms, while elderly women sang ancient Igbo marriage songs that had been passed from one generation to another. Children chased one another between decorated chairs. Young men carried trays of food from one corner of the compound to another. Everywhere Obinna looked, people were smiling. His bride smiled the brightest. Adaora looked breathtaking in her white wedding gown, embroidered with tiny pearls that shimmered every time sunlight touched them. Her caramel brown skin glowed softly beneath the evening light, and her gentle smile made everyone who looked at her believe true happiness really existed. Obinna had loved her for 5 years. He knew the sound of her laughter. He knew the way she tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear whenever she became shy. He knew she always squeezed his left hand twice when she became nervous. She did it during the church service, she did it again during the photographs, and she did it one last time before they entered the reception hall. Everything felt perfect, almost too perfect. The first strange thing happened during the couple's entrance. As the master of ceremonies announced their arrival, guests stood clapping while photographers rushed forward. Then every camera flash stopped. Not because the photographers stopped taking pictures, because none of the cameras worked anymore. One after another, every screen turned completely black. The photographers frowned. They removed batteries, changed memory cards, restarted the cameras. Nothing. One elderly photographer quietly crossed himself. "I have never seen this before." People laughed nervously. Someone joked that the ancestors wanted privacy. Everyone smiled again. The music continued. But beneath one of the old udala trees at the edge of the compound, an elderly blind woman slowly stood from her chair. Her cloudy eyes stared toward the newlyweds. Although she could not see them, she somehow knew exactly where they were standing. She whispered just loudly enough for the woman beside her to hear. "The door has opened." The woman beside her frowned. "What door?" The old woman said nothing else. She simply gripped her walking stick until her knuckles turned white. Inside the reception hall, the celebration continued. Guests danced. Money rained over the bride and groom. Laughter echoed from every corner. Then, without warning, every mirror inside the hall cracked at exactly the same moment. Not one, not two, every single one. The decorative mirrors hanging on the walls, the mirrors inside the washrooms, even the small mirror inside the bride's handbag split down the middle. The music stopped. People stared in confusion. No earthquake had occurred. No object had struck the mirrors, yet every piece of glass now carried the same thin crack running from top to bottom. A strange silence settled over the hall. Then someone laughed awkwardly. It must be the heat. Others forced themselves to laugh too. Within minutes, the celebration continued. Only the old woman did not smile. She quietly stood, picked up her walking stick, and left the wedding without saying goodbye to anyone. No one noticed her leave, except an old caretaker named Pachika. He watched her disappear through the village gate. Then he noticed something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand. The old woman's shadow was walking in the opposite direction. He blinked. The shadow disappeared. He convinced himself he was simply tired. By the time the celebration ended, darkness had already settled across Umudike. The newlyweds arrived at Obinna's family mansion shortly before midnight. The old house had belonged to his great-grandfather. It stood alone on a small hill overlooking the village, surrounded by giant iroko trees, older than anyone alive could remember. The mansion was beautiful. But after sunset, it always felt different. The walls seemed taller, the corridors quieter. The old portraits lining the staircase seemed to watch anyone who passed. Adaora laughed as they entered. "I still can't believe this house belongs to your family." Obinna smiled. "My grandmother used to say every brick remembers a story." Adaora playfully nudged him. "And do the ghosts parent too?" He laughed. "There are no ghosts. If there were," she leaned closer, "they would have attended the wedding." Their laughter echoed through the entrance hall. Pachika carried their bags upstairs before wishing them a peaceful night. As he reached the front door, he hesitated. He looked back at the couple. His smile slowly disappeared. "Young master," Obinna turned. "Yes? If anyone knocks on your bedroom door after midnight," he swallowed, "don't answer." Obinna frowned. "What?" The old man forced a weak smile. "It is only an old village belief." "What belief?" Pachika shook his head. "Forget I said anything." He hurried outside before Obinna could ask another question. Adaora laughed. "Your caretaker enjoys frightening people." Obinna smiled, though something about the old man's expression stayed with him. They climbed the grand staircase together. Halfway upstairs, Adaora suddenly stopped. "What is it?" Obinna asked. She stared toward the large antique mirror hanging at the end of the corridor. "I thought I saw someone." He looked. The hallway was empty. "You've had a long day." She nodded. "You're right." But as they continued walking, neither of them noticed that inside the antique mirror, their reflections had not moved. The real couple disappeared around the corner. Their reflections remained standing, watching, smiling. Then, very slowly, Adaora's reflection turned its head toward Obinna's reflection. It whispered something. Obinna's reflection nodded. The two reflections smiled at each other. Then both slowly walked deeper into the mirror until they disappeared into darkness. A few minutes later, the real Obinna stepped out of the bedroom. "I forgot my phone," he said. Adaora smiled from inside the room. "Hurry back. I'll only be a minute." He walked downstairs. The mansion was silent. Only the old grandfather clock ticked steadily in the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. He found his phone on the sitting room table. As he turned to leave, the grandfather clock began striking midnight. 1, 2, 3. Its sound echoed through the empty mansion. By the time it struck 12, someone knocked gently on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Obinna froze. Pachika's warning echoed in his mind. If anyone knocks after midnight, don't answer. He stood perfectly still. Another knock came, this time softer, almost polite. Then, a woman's voice drifted through the wooden door. "Obinna." His heart stopped. It was Adaora's voice, exactly Adaora's voice. But Adaora was upstairs waiting for him. The voice came again. Please, don't open the door. Obinna's blood turned to ice. He stared at the entrance. If Adaora was upstairs, then who was standing outside calling his name? Obinna's fingers tightened around his phone until his knuckles turned white. His heartbeat became louder than the grandfather clock. The voice outside the mansion sounded exactly like his wife's. Not similar, not close, exactly the same. Standing behind her was another woman. She looked exactly like Adaora. The same face, the same eyes, the same wedding gown. Only one thing was different. The second woman's smile. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was heartbreak. She looked at Obinna through the mirror. Tears rolled down her face. Then she mouthed 4 silent words. She is my sister. Before Obinna could react, the mirror rippled like disturbed water. The reflection shattered into countless silver waves. The room returned. The ordinary bedroom appeared again. The mirror reflected only empty furniture. Adaora was gone. Obinna stumbled backward. No! He searched beneath the bed, inside the wardrobe, behind the curtains. Nothing. His wife had disappeared. On the dressing table lay only one object, a small silver hairpin. Obinna picked it up. It felt freezing cold. Attached to it was a tiny folded piece of yellowed paper. He unfolded it with shaking hands. The ink looked decades old. It contained only one sentence. If one twin returns before dawn, the other will be forgotten forever. Obinna read the sentence again. Then again. The words refused to make sense. If one twin returns before dawn, the other will be forgotten forever. His hands shook so badly that the knot slipped onto the wooden floor. Pachika slowly picked it up. The moment his eyes landed on the faded handwriting, his face lost all color. No, he whispered. It has started. Obinna grabbed his shoulders. What has started? The old caretaker looked at him with frightened eyes. The choosing. The what? I prayed this generation would never see it. Obinna was losing patience. My wife has disappeared. Then we must leave. What? We have to find Mama Urena. Who is she? The only person still alive who remembers the first choosing. Before Obinna could ask another question, the bedroom door slammed shut by itself. The windows burst open. A freezing wind rushed into the room. The candles on the bedside tables extinguished instantly. Only the dressing mirror began glowing with pale silver light. A soft humming drifted from inside it. A lullaby. An old Igbo lullaby. Pachika closed his eyes. I remember that song. You know it? My mother used to sing it. The mothers of twin girls always sang it. The humming suddenly stopped. Then a little girl's laughter echoed from inside the mirror. Not one child, 2. The laughter bounced around the room before fading into silence. Obinna rushed toward the mirror. Adaora! Nothing. Only his own frightened reflection stared back. Then, his reflection smiled. Obinna froze. He had not smiled. His reflection slowly raised one hand. It placed a finger against its lips, as though asking him to remain quiet. Then it pointed toward the wardrobe. Obinna spun around. The wardrobe stood exactly where it had always been. Nothing unusual. When he looked back at the mirror, His reflection had returned to normal. "What did you see?" Pachika asked. "My reflection. It moved." The old man nodded sadly. "Then the mirror realm has seen your face." Obinna slowly walked toward the wardrobe. His heart pounded inside his chest. He opened the doors. Nothing. Only Adaora's wedding dress bag and a few neatly folded clothes. He sighed. "I must be imagining." A loud knock came from inside the wardrobe. Obinna jumped backward. The knock came again. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from behind the wardrobe wall. Pachika hurried forward. "Move!" Together, they pushed the heavy wardrobe aside. Behind it, hidden between years of wallpaper, was a narrow wooden door. Its frame was carved with ancient symbols. A large iron lock hung from its handle. The lock had already rusted. Obinna stared in disbelief. "There has always been a room behind our bedroom." Pachika looked equally shocked. "I walked in this house for 40 years. I never knew." The humming returned. This time, it came from behind the hidden door. Obinna pressed his ear against the wood. Someone was crying softly. It was Adaora. "I'm here," she whispered weakly. "Please, hurry." Without thinking, Obinna grabbed the rusty lock and pulled. It refused to move. He pulled harder. Nothing. Pachika searched nearby shelves desperately. "There has to be a key." "There isn't time." Obinna kicked the door. The old wood shook. A second kick. The hinges groaned. On the third kick, the door burst open. A blast of icy air poured into the bedroom. Beyond the doorway lay a narrow stone staircase descending deep beneath the mansion. Neither man spoke. The mansion should not have existed. The yet ancient stone steps disappeared into darkness below. A faint silver light glowed from somewhere beneath. Obinna looked at Pachika. "I'm going." The old man sighed. "I knew you would." He picked up an old oil lantern hanging beside the bedroom door. "I'll lead." "You know where this goes?" "No." But old houses never hide empty rooms. They slowly descended. Each step felt older than the mansion itself. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The walls changed from brick to rough black stone. Ancient carvings covered every surface, hundreds of identical circles, each containing the image of 2 little girls holding hands. Halfway down, Obinna noticed something strange. Some carvings showed 2 girls, others showed only one, as if someone slowly erased the second child over many years. "Why are they disappearing?" he whispered. Pachika swallowed. "Maybe they're being forgotten." The staircase finally ended inside a vast underground chamber. Both men stopped walking. The room was enormous, much larger than the mansion above could possibly contain. Hundreds of mirrors lined the circular walls. Some were cracked, some were covered with cloth, some reflected places that clearly were not inside the chamber. One mirror showed heavy rain falling over a forest. Another reflected an empty church. Another what looked like an old village from 100 years ago. None reflected the room they stood in. At the center of the chamber stood a stone well. Unlike ordinary wells, its water was perfectly still, almost like polished glass. Above it hung dozens of tiny brass bells. None moved, none rang. The silence felt unnatural. Then one bell chimed, softly. Ting! Another answered, then another. Soon every bell around the well began ringing without wind. Their melody filled the chamber. The water inside the well rippled. A face slowly appeared. Not Adaora's, another young woman. She looked exactly like Adaora. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. She smiled gently. "My name," she whispered, "is Adaku." She looked directly at Obinna. "I've been waiting for someone who would finally believe me." Before Obinna could speak, another face surfaced beside hers. It was Adaora. She reached upward desperately. "Obinna!" But before she could say another word, a pair of pale hands rose silently from beneath the dark water and pulled both sisters back into the depths. The well became still again. Only one thing floated to the surface: a small carved wooden doll with two faces. The little wooden doll drifted slowly across the dark surface of the well. It should have floated like ordinary wood. Instead, it stood upright. Its tiny painted eyes were open. One face smiled, the other wept. Obinna stared at it without blinking. "What is this place?" Pachika slowly removed his cap. His voice trembled. "My grandfather once told me of a room that should never be found. I thought it was only another village story. The House of Reflections." Obinna looked around the enormous chamber. Hundreds of mirrors surrounded them like silent witnesses. None reflected either of them. Every mirror showed another place, another time, another life. He stepped toward the stone well. "I have to get Adaora out." The moment he reached for the doll, a woman's voice echoed behind him. "Don't touch it!" Both men turned sharply. An elderly woman stood beside one of the covered mirrors. No one had heard her arrive. She wore a simple white wrapper with a deep blue shawl over her shoulders. Her hair was completely silver. Though old, she stood with remarkable strength. Her eyes were cloudy, blind, yet she looked directly at Obinna. "Mama Urenya," Pachika whispered. The old woman nodded once. "I told your father this day would come." "You knew?" "I hoped I was wrong." Obinna stepped toward her. "My wife is trapped. So is another woman who looks exactly like her." Mama Urenya sighed deeply. "They are not strangers. They are sisters." Obinna lowered his head. "The note said something about twins." The old woman slowly walked toward the well. "For 26 years, I prayed that note would never be read again." She carefully lifted the wooden doll from the water. The moment she touched it, the bells hanging above the well stopped ringing. Complete silence filled the chamber. She handed the doll to Obinna. "Look closely." He examined it. Both faces looked almost identical. Then he noticed one tiny difference. The smiling face wore a tiny carved necklace. The crying face wore none. Mama Urenya smiled sadly. One lived beneath the sun, the other beneath the glass. She gently touched the door. It split cleanly into two separate figures. Hidden inside was a tightly folded piece of old cloth. Obinna unfolded it carefully. It was not cloth. It was part of an old family tree drawn by hand. At the top stood two names: Chief Ezekiel Nwosu, Grace Nwosu. Beneath them, two daughters, Adaora, Adaku. Someone had violently scratched Adaku's name away. Yet enough remained to read it. Obinna looked toward Mama Urenya. "Who erased her?" Mama Urenya closed her eyes. "Her own father." Silence. What? He believed forgetting one child would save the other. How could any father do that? He didn't erase her because he stopped loving her. He erased her because he loved them both. Obinna couldn't understand. Mama Urenya slowly continued. When the girls were 5, they wandered into the sacred mirror shrine. They thought they were playing. They were chasing butterflies. They found the first mirror. Pachika whispered, "The black mirror." She nodded. It had remained sealed for almost 300 years. But identical twins carry a gift. Their spirits naturally open paths that ordinary people cannot. Obinna remembered the note. the door. The blind woman at the wedding said the door had opened. Mama Orena nodded. Because marriage completed the bond. Everyone fell silent. The day Adaora married you, the final seal weakened. Obinna looked confused. Why? Because marriage joined two bloodlines. And this family, she looked toward the walls covered with mirrors, has guarded the mirror realm for generations without knowing it. A loud crack echoed through the chamber. One of the mirrors shattered. Instead of broken glass, black smoke poured from the frame. Within seconds, another mirror cracked, then another. Soon, dozens of mirrors began breaking one after another. Mama Orena's expression hardened. It knows we're here. What knows? The one who built the prison. Obinna frowned. I thought the prison trapped evil. It did. But prisons always have keepers. The black smoke gathered at the center of the chamber. It twisted upward like a living tornado. Within it, a tall human figure slowly formed, not completely, only a shadow. Its face remained hidden beneath swelling darkness. Only two silver eyes shone through. The shadow spoke. Its voice sounded like many people whispering together. You continue asking the wrong questions. Obinna instinctively stepped in front of Mama Orena. Who are you? The shadow laughed. You asked that question before. I asked nothing. You asked the day you first looked into a mirror. The chamber became colder. The silver eyes settled on the old woman. Orena, you still interfere. Mama Orena lifted her chin. I still remember. The shadow became strangely quiet. That, it whispered, is why I cannot defeat you. Obinna looked between them. You know each other? The old woman answered without looking away from the shadow. I have met him once. When? 60 years ago. The shadow smiled. And she escaped. Mama Orena finally looked at Obinna. I wasn't always blind. The word stunned both men. What? My sight was the price. I looked directly into the first mirror. I survived. But I never saw the world again. She smiled peacefully. I lost my eyes. I gained the truth. The shadow's voice became colder. Tell him the rest. Mama Orena took a deep breath. There is something no one has told you. She looked directly at Obinna. You believe you are here to rescue your wife? Yes, you are. But that is not why the mirror realm chose you. Obinna felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What do you mean? The old woman reached into the pocket of her wrapper. She removed a faded photograph. It showed 3 young children standing together. 2 little girls and 1 little boy. The boy looked unmistakably like Obinna at the age of 6. He stared at the photograph in disbelief. That's impossible. It isn't. You knew Adaora and Adako when all 3 of you were children. His breathing became uneven. I've never met them before. Mama Orena gently turned the photograph over. Written on the back in faded ink were the words, the 3 children who must never remember one another. Obinna's head suddenly began pounding. A forgotten memory flickered through his mind. A rainy afternoon. A little girl laughing. Another girl handing him a carved wooden doll with two faces. Then, a mirror, a scream, darkness. He staggered backward, clutching his head. "I know that doll," he whispered. "I've held it before." The shadow smiled. "At last, you are beginning to remember." And somewhere, deep beneath the still water of the ancient well, two identical young women slowly opened their eyes together. The water inside the ancient well was no longer still. Tiny circles spread gently across its dark surface. One, then another, then dozens, as though something beneath the water had finally awakened. Obinna's breathing became heavy. The forgotten memory refused to leave his mind. He could almost smell the rain, almost hear two little girls laughing, almost remember a promise. But every time the memory came into focus, a sharp pain exploded inside his head. He fell to one knee. Mama Orena knelt beside him. "Don't fight it. I have to remember." "You will." But memories buried by the mirror realm never return all at once. They return like pieces of broken glass. She gently placed her hand on his forehead. "Close your eyes." It reflected the children perfectly. Then, the reflections smiled first. The girls giggled. Little Obinna frowned. "That's strange." The twin sisters stepped closer. The mirror rippled like water touched by rain. One little girl reached out. The other copied her. Suddenly, the surface exploded into swirling silver light. The shrine shook violently. The children screamed. One twin stumbled backward. The other was pulled forward. Little Obinna lunged. He caught her hand. For one brief second, he held on. "I've got you," the little girl cried. "Don't let go." He pulled with all his strength. Then, a shadow rose behind the trapped child. It stretched one long arm toward Obinna. The little boy screamed. His fingers opened. The girl's hand slipped away. She vanished into the mirror. The entire shrine became silent. Odont Obinna opened his eyes with a cry. Tears streamed down his face. "I remember. I let go." Mama Orena gently shook her head. "No, you were a child. I promised I wouldn't let go. You tried, but some promises are too heavy for children." Obinna buried his face in his hands. "I forgot her." The old woman smiled sadly. "No, you were made to forget." A loud splash echoed from the well. Everyone turned. Two pale hands slowly gripped the stone edge. Then, Adaora climbed out. She was soaked from head to toe. Her white wedding gown clung to her body. Obinna ran toward her. "Adaora," she smiled weakly. "Obinna." He embraced her tightly. "I thought I'd lost you." "I thought so too." She held him for several long seconds. Then she quietly whispered into his ear, "Don't let go this time." His heart stopped. Those were the exact words the little girl had spoken inside his memory. Before he could ask anything, another pair of hands appeared at the edge of the well. Adaku climbed out. She looked exhausted. Her face was pale. Her long hair hung heavily around her shoulders. Yet, despite everything she had suffered, she smiled. Not because she was happy, because she was finally free. The twin sisters looked at one another. 26 years. No words could carry that much pain. Adaora slowly stepped forward. Adaku did the same. When they finally embraced, every mirror in the chamber began glowing softly. The bells above the well rang together, not in warning, in celebration. Even Mama Orena wiped tears from her eyes. The balance has returned. But the celebration lasted only moments. The shadow at the center of the chamber began laughing, not loudly, quietly, patiently. As expected, everyone turned. The shadow had become clearer. It was almost human now. Long black robes, tall, graceful. Its face remained hidden beneath shifting reflections. Obinna stepped forward. "What do you want?" The shadow tilted its head. "I already have what I wanted." "What?" It took only one forgotten promise: to open my prison. The mirrors around the chamber suddenly cracked. 1, 2, 10, 50. Within seconds, every mirror shattered. Black mist poured from every broken frame. The chamber trembled violently. The bells above the well rang so wildly that several snapped from their chains. Mama Orena's expression changed instantly. No. She looked toward the ceiling. "It has broken through." "What has?" She whispered only 2 words. "The first keeper." A deafening roar echoed from somewhere beneath the earth. The stone floor split apart. A blinding silver light erupted from the enormous crack. Then, a gigantic hand made entirely of living mirror slowly reached upward from the darkness below. Its polished surface reflected every frightened face in the chamber. One finger, then another, curled around the broken stone. The entire underground hall shook. The first keeper was climbing out. The gigantic hand tightened its grip on the broken stone. The entire chamber shook so violently that dust rained from the ceiling. Ancient carvings split apart. Huge cracks raced across the walls. The bells hanging above the well began ringing wildly, not from the wind, but as if they were crying out in fear. No one moved. Even the shadow that had been laughing only moments earlier became strangely quiet. Then, a second enormous hand emerged from the glowing abyss. It looked identical to the first. Its surface was polished like a perfect mirror, yet thousands of frightened faces moved beneath it, trapped like shadows inside glass. The first keeper slowly pulled itself upward. Its head finally appeared. There was no face, only a smooth mirror where its face should have been. Every person looking at it saw something different. Obinna saw himself as an old man. Adaora saw herself standing alone beside a grave. Adaku saw a little girl still trapped inside the shrine. Pachika saw his late wife smiling at him. Mama Orena saw nothing. She smiled softly. "It still cannot deceive me." The keeper's voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Blind guardian, you return." Mama Orena stood taller. "I never truly left. You failed once. I survived. You lost your sight. I gained wisdom." The keeper remained silent for a long moment. Then it laughed. The mirror shattered even further. "You humans never learn. It is not mirrors that imprison you. It is memory." The shadow beside it slowly bowed. My master. Obinna looked between the two beings. So, you serve it? The shadow smiled. I was never the master. I was only the gate. The black mist surrounding the shadow suddenly dissolved. For the first time, everyone saw its true face. It looked exactly like Obinna. Not similar. Exactly. The same height, the same eyes, the same voice, even the small scar above his eyebrow. Adaora gasped. Obinna. He stared in disbelief. What are you? The other Obinna smiled. I am every fear you buried. I am every promise you broke. I am the reflection you left behind when you forgot. Mama Orena whispered, the mirror double. Pachika stumbled backward. I thought they were legends. They are older than legends. The false Obinna looked toward Adaku. You remember me? She slowly nodded. You spoke to me. For years. You said my family forgot me. I only repeated what you believed. Tears filled Adaku's eyes. You lied. I merely watered the loneliness already inside your heart. Silence filled the chamber. The false Obinna looked disappointed. You were supposed to hate your sister. You were supposed to envy her. You were supposed to open the door willingly. He smiled bitterly. But she never stopped loving you. He turned toward Adaora. And you spent 26 years grieving someone you couldn't remember. Adaora lowered her head. I always felt something missing. You did, but love kept searching. The mirror double sighed. That is what ruined everything. Suddenly, the keeper stretched one enormous arm toward the sisters. The air became unbearably cold. The stone floor beneath Adaora and Adaku turned into shining black glass. They couldn't move. Their feet were trapped. The keeper spoke. 2 sisters, 1 soul, the lock. Its mirrored face reflected both women standing as children before the ancient shrine. You sealed me. Now, you will free me. Golden symbols suddenly appeared beneath the sisters. They glowed brighter and brighter. A farewell never spoken. The underground chamber became brighter with every soul that departed. The keeper watched them rise. For the first time, it whispered, they're free. Mama Orena slowly walked toward the giant. No one tried to stop her. She stood before the creature that had terrified generations. Then she bowed her head. Thank you. Everyone stared at her. Obinna couldn't believe what he had heard. Thank you? The old woman looked back at him. It was never born evil. Silence. It was created. The keeper slowly closed its eyes. I was the first guardian. The chamber became still. The giant continued speaking. Long before villages, long before kingdoms, there was no boundary between the world of the living and the world of spirits. They crossed freely. Some brought wisdom, others brought destruction. So the ancestors forged the first mirror. It needed a guardian. I accepted. Mama Orena nodded sadly. You are supposed to watch the doorway, forever. The keeper lowered her head. I was alone, for centuries. I watched mothers grow old. I watched children become ancestors. I watched generations disappear, and no one remembered my name. Its voice broke. I forgot who I had been. Tears rolled down Adaora's cheeks. It became lonely.
Mama Orena nodded. Loneliness became bitterness. Bitterness became hunger. Hunger became the prison. The old woman looked at the giant with compassion. You stopped guarding the doorway. You became afraid of being forgotten. The keeper whispered, "Yes." Obinna slowly understood. "So every soul you trapped," the keeper answered before he finished, "I hoped they would stay with me." No one spoke. Even the mirror double lowered its head. The truth was more heartbreaking than anyone expected. The greatest monster in their history had once simply been lonely. The mirror double slowly walked toward the keeper. Its appearance was changing. It no longer looked exactly like Obinna. Its face flickered.
Sometimes it resembled a child, sometimes an old man, sometimes a frightened woman, sometimes nobody at all. "I was born," it whispered, "from your loneliness." The keeper nodded. "You were. You became everything I refused to face. I became your fear." The mirror double smiled sadly. "I didn't want to exist." Those words echoed through the chamber. The creature everyone believed to be evil had never wanted life. It had only been an echo, a wound given form. The keeper reached toward it. For the first time, master and servant embraced. The mirror double dissolved into countless tiny lights. They floated gently into the keeper's chest. The giant closed its eyes. "I remember now." Suddenly, the entire underground chamber began collapsing. Huge stones crashed from the ceiling. The mirrors lining the walls shattered one after the other. Mama Orena raised her voice. "Everyone, the mirror realm is closing. We must leave." Obinna grabbed Adaora's hand. Adaora grabbed Adaku's. Pachika supported Mama Orena. They hurried toward the long staircase. Behind them, the keeper remained standing. It looked peaceful, almost relieved. Obinna stopped. "No." Adaora pulled him. "We have to go." "What about him?" The keeper smiled. "My duty is finally ending." "But you'll die." The giant slowly shook his head. "No, I'll become a memory." It looked toward the sisters. "Do not let people fear mirrors. Teach them to fear forgetting love." Those were its final words. The ceiling collapsed. A pillar of stone crashed between the family and the keeper. The blinding golden light swallowed everything behind it. The ancient guardian disappeared forever. The family barely reached the hidden staircase before the underground chamber completely collapsed. They stumbled into the mansion just as the secret passage sealed itself behind them. The hidden door vanished. The wall became solid, as though the chamber had never existed. Outside, the first rays of dawn spread across Umudike. The birds began singing. The heavy darkness covering the village lifted. The air felt different, lighter, peaceful. Villagers slowly emerged from their homes. They looked around in confusion. No broken mirrors, no strange shadows, no unnatural silence. It was as though a terrible dream had ended. 3 months later, life had begun again. The old mansion no longer felt haunted. Children played freely in the compound. Laughter echoed through rooms that had once known only whispers. Adaora and Adaku were learning something they had never truly experienced: life together. They cooked with their mother, visited the village market, argued over clothes, laughed until tears rolled down their faces. They were making up for 26 stolen years. Obinna watched them one evening from the veranda. He smiled. "You know," he said, "you both finish each other's sentences." The sisters laughed. "We always did." Pachika walked over carrying a wooden box. "I found this while cleaning the old attic." Inside lay dozens of faded photographs, family pictures, wedding pictures, birthday celebrations. This time, every photograph showed two little girls. No one had been erased. History itself had healed. Mama Rena smiled. The world remembers. 1 year later, the village celebrated another wedding. This time, it belonged to Adaku. The entire village danced from morning until night. But just before the bride entered the reception, she paused before a large decorative mirror. She smiled at her own reflection. For a brief second, another reflection appeared beside her, an elderly man dressed in ancient white robes. His face was gentle, peaceful. He smiled proudly. Then he slowly bowed his head and disappeared. Adako quietly smiled. "Thank you." No one else had seen him. Years passed. Adaora and Obinna were blessed with twin daughters. The entire village laughed when the news spread. Some people became frightened. Old stories still lingered, but Mama Reina only smiled. "There is nothing to fear." She gently lifted the babies into her arms. "The curse ended. These children carry no poison. They carry a promise." Many years later, after Mama Orena peacefully joined her ancestors, the villagers honored her final wish. The ruined shrine in the western forest was never rebuilt. Instead, they planted a circle of white lilies where the first mirror had once stood. At the center of the flowers, they placed a simple stone. No names, no statues, only one sentence carved into it. "Love remembers what fear tries to erase." Children often visited the lilies. They asked their parents why there were no mirrors there. The parents always answered the same way. Because the truest reflection is found in the people who stand beside you. A rainy evening, many years after everything had ended, Adaola's twin daughters were playing hide and seek near the flower garden. One little girl suddenly stopped. She looked into a rain puddle. "Mama," she called. Adaora walked over. "What is it?" The little girl pointed. "I saw someone smiling." Adaora looked into the puddle. She expected to see only her own reflection. Instead, for the briefest heartbeat, she saw 4 smiling faces. Hers, Adako's, a kind old blind woman, and behind them all, a gentle giant whose mirrored face now reflected only the morning sun. The image disappeared as the rain rippled the water. Adaora smiled through quiet tears. She whispered, "We remember." A soft breeze passed through the white lilies. Somewhere beyond the world of the living, it almost sounded like someone whispering back, "Thank you." The rain continued falling, not with sorrow, but with peace. And from that day onward, whenever children in Umudike looked into a mirror, their parents would smile and tell them, "Never be afraid of your reflection. Be afraid only of forgetting the people who taught you who you are." If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that love is strongest when it remembers, then subscribe and join us for more unforgettable African stories filled with mystery, hope, and heart. And until our next story, remember the people who made you who you are, because sometimes remembering is the greatest act of love. The end.